We're in an alarming time in history. A woman can come in for a C-section in a hospital. She's asked, hey, do you think you're going to have any more children? Because while you're open, we might as well tie or cut your tubes. We don't have to tie or cut anything because this is natural and good. I can't believe I'm sharing some of this stuff.
Hi everyone, so we have Lisa Canning on the show with us today. She is the Possibility Mom. And this episode is for any woman out there who might be struggling with the idea of having children and yet also being very ambitious with her business goals. Because today we get to sit down with Lisa and talk about her own transformation when it came from kind of being afraid of having children and wanting to postpone that life into fully diving into it while marrying it with these incredible ambitions as a wife, mother, and business owner who now helps other women strive for those same possible dreams. We also will get to hear about a new project she is working on to help transform women's healthcare. So help me welcome to the show, Lisa Canning. All right, Lisa, well, welcome to the PeakLife Show.
Well, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you, and thanks for your yes to being here. So first off, just tell our audience a little bit about you. I have followed you on Instagram for many, many years, so I know quite a bit, but give our audience just a couple tidbits about who you are, what you do.
I'm currently a mom of 10 sweet little human beings on earth with one more on the way. And then I have a sweet baby girl in heaven that we lost through miscarriage. My career is a very interesting one. I started as an HGTV personality. So I started my career in front of the camera. I had a show in 2007 and then worked for many years behind camera, working on shows like The Property Brothers and many other HGTV personalities. That work took me all over the United States and Canada. And I had a very happy, fun career both in front of and behind the camera. But I also was having lots of fun being married to my husband and having children in rapid succession. We had children like every 18 months or so, like very, very, very rapidly. Wow. And that became increasingly more unsustainable with this television life I was living out. And it became very, very challenging identity-wise. You know, I was in lots of amazing Catholic circles who were telling me, like, you really have no business working. Your children are too little and you are doing a disservice to your husband and to your kids. And then I had, on the flip side, all these people telling me, yeah, you really should not get pregnant because it's going to negatively impact your television career. So I was like, I have no idea who to listen to. I didn't have the skills back then to discern for myself what might be the most important thing to do. And so I went around life trying to prove myself to everyone, and spoiler alert, that does not result in favorable outcomes. And so my transition to becoming a business and a life coach came out of my own peril. Like I just sort of was like, Lord, I don't think you want me to be this unhappy. I don't think you want my spouse to be this unhappy. You've given me all these children, but you've also given me all these gifts. So show me, Lord, what it looks like to use all of those in a way that is pleasing to you, in a way that honors your design for my life, my fertility, my family, in a way that makes us make money, because that was a very important component to all of this.
Yeah.
And show me how to do it. And so he did. But he showed me over the years what that looks like, how you can invite the Lord into your discernment. And I turned all of that into a book, The Possibility Mom. And so that's how you and I are sitting here today. I started coaching, speaking, and there's a lot of satisfaction that comes out of helping women to realize their potential. And then very recently, that whole potential concept has also translated into potential with women's healthcare. And so I've recently been invited to take the helm of an organization called the Guiding Star Project, where I serve as president, where we introduce women to the truths of their body, the potential of their body, that they can operate completely in line with the natural way that God has created us with our superpowers. And so I do quite a bit of work with women in the United States in the pro-life medical space.
Wow. what we do as women, as mothers or women in the workforce, where we find our identity and how to kind of block out the outside noise and figure out what is my calling, what is God calling me specifically to, and what does that look like in each season of life?
The word surrender in my life is very relative. I would say in the beginning, that's how I got into trouble, so to speak. I would not surrender. I was like, Lord, no, I'm going to just prove that I can do all of it. And it resulted in burnout. It resulted in so much tension in my marriage. But that really is, I think, when one can truly step into that space of surrender and say, Lord, I trust you with whatever plans you have for my life more than I trust my own. It's a very, I'm using the word magical lightly, there's this sort of interesting thing that happens when you surrender. You start to co-create with the Lord in a way that is very different than when you just white knuckle your way and say, Lord, I'm just going to do it all my way, and I invite you to come along for the ride. Let's invert that. Let's invert that a little bit. But it's a very hard lesson to learn, and I think for a lot of women, especially if you were raised like many of us, I would say, so I'm 41 at the time of this recording, I would say in my teens and 20s, it was this message of like, girl power, girls can do anything. Sheryl Sandberg was like very popular, the book Lean In, like crash all the glass ceilings, like women can do anything. It's a very hard concept to take that, and it can be for some women, marry that with, okay, Lord, I'm going to surrender all of my ambition. That can be a very challenging thing to marry. But at the end of the day, it's a very necessary thing for a woman who might have career ambition or might have been raised in an environment where career was very important. It's a very important thing for her to reconcile.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And on the flip side too, it's not a bad thing for women to have these dreams and these career ambitions, but how do we do so in a way to where if we are also called to the vocation of marriage or family life and motherhood, how do we marry the two in a way that's well ordered? What was your journey into NFP, whether that was tracking pre-marriage or did you kind of discover that within the early stages of marriage? What did that look like for you?
Oh, how vulnerable do you want to go? I was raised in this sort of environment of girl power and very much crash glass ceiling. So this notion that women have a spot at the table and we need women there, blah, blah, blah. All that fun rhetoric.
Yeah.
I could not understand how that was reconciled with family life. And in fact, this is super vulnerable to share, I delayed getting married for as long as I possibly could. So my sweet husband, he proposed when we were still in school. It was very easy for me to use school as the excuse. Like, no, like I want to be engaged to you, but we're not going to set a date until I'm done, like exams. Like, let me get through exams. That's like reasonable. Like, I'll just get through my exams and then we'll set a wedding date. And then I just never set a wedding date. Like, it just kept going on and on and on and on. And I realized that the huge sort of impediment for me of setting our wedding date was that I was like, I don't know how to reconcile kids and all this drive I have. And so it's a very long-winded way of explaining that finally the Lord healed my heart. It was actually a very powerful, I'll tell the story. It's actually very powerful. I was in adoration and my husband had finally given me a somewhat mild ultimatum. He was like, I know you love me. I can tell. I don't think this is a me problem. I think this is a you problem. And he was like, but you kind of can't just keep stringing me along like this. Like, you either have to say we're going to get married or we're not. And so I took that to prayer in adoration at this youth conference I attended. And I remember like just begging the Lord, like heal my heart on this. Like, I love Josh. I want to be married to him, but like, show me how this makes sense in family life. And I'll never forget it. And it's hard for me to not get emotional every time I tell the story because it was just so poignant. It was literally as if he was in my ear, like a person right next to me. And he said, the most important thing you will ever do is be a wife and mom. And just like that audible, the most important thing you will ever do is be a wife and mom. I remember like standing up, or maybe I felt like I stood up, but it just was this feeling of like, okay, the like chains have come off, the like burden has been, you know, removed. And then I literally wrote my husband a card being like, I'll marry you on December 8th, 2007. Like just like, okay, fine. Here's the, like, finally here's the date. Yeah, that was a very important identity shift. And it was interesting because he was like, I could hear him almost say other words. Like, it's not like you're going to not do other things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not exclusive, but the most important thing you will ever do is be a wife and mom. And so that was a huge shift. I was still kind of like, okay, this whole NFP thing, like, we're 100% gonna like delay having kids. Like, I was still so confused about it.
Yeah.
But then again, this is a little intimate, but I remember the feeling I had, this overwhelming feeling of when we were intimate, like those first kind of, that season when you're kind of figuring things out.
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling like this is such a powerful, emotional thing we're doing. Why would I not want a child to come from it? And that was another really big shift. It was like, this is such a powerful expression of our love. Like, why would I not want a child to come? And so that was just a very interesting, very personal, obviously, perspective shift I had.
But I think that's so beautiful, and I really appreciate your vulnerability, because I think more women, and especially us young mothers, I'm 28, pregnant with number 4 right now, so you're much farther along than me. I'm second trimester, but I think it's important for us to be able to have that witness of what open to life looks like, and that discernment looks like in NFP with each individual couple, and what God is calling you to, and what he has called you to with your family life isn't going to look like your very best friend, right? He's going to call that family to something for what they need, and it's going to be different. Often when people see a big family, they're like, oh, that's because they use NFP and it doesn't really work. When in reality, people forget that people also have they choose to desire more children, and that desire is not wrong or bad, and it's okay if you also don't desire 10 children. That is okay, but it's perfectly fine for others to desire to want that big family and to strive for it too, right? And to try to make it happen. I think that's beautiful.
There is a book that I encourage your listeners to dive into. It's Hannah's Children by Dr. Catherine Pekalik. And Dr. Catherine did this study. She's a professor of economics. So I find her economic lens on large family living and openness to life fascinating. She has so many things to say about the relationship between economics and large families. Anyway, she did this study on Catholic and non. So there were Catholic families, Jewish families, Mormon families, and I can't recall if there were any non-religious families, but I would say a diverse group of people with 5 or more children. And she really focused on the reasons why. And overwhelmingly, or at least from my memory, the data was, they enjoy children. And I would say that's myself and my husband. It's like, we're not on some race to be like, competitive. Like, we want the biggest passenger van. Like,
new HGTV show for them over here.
The things that people have said to me over the years, my friend, about like, oh, like, are you just trying to get like a soccer team, a hockey team? Oh, you're just trying to even the sexes. Oh, this, that, whatever. Like, I have received every absurd comment under the sun. But honestly, what I think people fail to realize in large families, and I can only speak for myself, but I anecdotally know what my girlfriends also think and what the women in Dr. Pekalik's book. I genuinely enjoy children. I love having them. Do I love every aspect of being pregnant? Of course not. I'm so sore. I have sciatic pain. I'm exhausted. Being 41 and pregnant is very different than, in my experience, being 28 and pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't enjoy every aspect of like the tensions and the difficulties, but like, I love watching my older children with my younger children. I love many of the elements of a large family, like even the logistics, like just like getting around places, the way that my family, there's a lot of helping that happens. There's a lot of community that happens, in a large family. And I think people don't realize, like, some women and men simply just enjoy children. And so I am one of them.
You're one of them. I love it. And I'm assuming that you didn't grow up in a large family.
I had just one sister, and it was definitely, this was something I struggled with in terms of, as I've already shared. For me, the crux of it was, how does one work and how does one have a career? I just could not understand that. That was for me the biggest challenge. I don't think it was for me a value thing. It was mainly just logistical. Like, I don't understand how one can work when there's always a baby. That was the thing.
How does it, like, practically, how do you actually live that out? What steps do I have to take, A, B, C, to get that done?
Even just simple things like, when do you put a child in daycare? Or when do you, like, what happens when you're nursing? Like, how do you just stop nursing? Like, I could not understand any of that. So, so that was my main challenge.
Yeah, and now you are 41 on baby number 12, right?
11 on Earth, but 12
11
in
on
total.
Earth, yeah. And business owner, and having kind of lived this past life of film, behind the scenes, and now getting to share your gifts on social media, speaking engagements, and then being able to help with women's healthcare too, So what was that journey in figuring out, okay, we're having children, we want to continue to have children, and yet you also have this really beautiful drive to work, and to kind of be a boss woman, a boss mama, So where did you start kind of connecting those dots to where you had peace with the both and?
There's so many angles in which I could take this, but I'm just going to go like straight to the deepest part, and that is discernment. So what do I mean by that? Everyone is created uniquely. Like, if you read, and I really should commit this to memory, oh my gosh, or I should at least have it beside me. But if you read the prologue, okay, everybody, go read the prologue of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, okay? It literally, and terrible that I'm paraphrasing it, but it literally says something. It's like, the purpose of man is to know and seek God. Like, and he desires, like God desires to be in communion with us. Like, this is not just like me seeking him. He also wants to be in relationship with every single one of us. That is the very first way we open the Catholic Catechism. And I think it's just so important to like pause there, because that dictates how we operate. So if we know we're supposed to be in relationship with God, that presupposes we're supposed to be talking to him, and that he is going to talk back to us. It's not like some lemming relationship where I'm just kind of like aimlessly following around something, some set of rules, No, it is literally, we need to seek him, we need to know him, but he also desires that of us. So why is this so important and related to discernment? We are all called to do something different, and that different thing is to make us holy. Mm-hmm. And that is it's like, we have to understand the nature of God too, that he desires our good. He desires us to have a future and a hope, like a future full of hope. And that if you can understand his nature is for you to have good things, that he's a good father, that he wants to give you good gifts, then we have to involve him in like every decision, every conversation. We have to understand also that when maybe something doesn't go the way you thought, like maybe you thought you'd have a career, or vice versa, you thought you'd stay home, but you're working, like that all of it is for your benefit in some way. And so I think I would have made life a lot easier for myself if I had known how to discern. And knowing how to discern comes out of a deep, intimate relationship with the Lord. So meaning you are talking to the Lord. When I say talking, literally like, Lord, this is really hard. Like literally the way you would talk to a friend. This is really hard. I'm having sciatic pain. You've given me all these other kids to take care of. How on earth is this supposed to work out? Like, and you're literally talking to him. Now, do you always have to complain to him? Think of how it would be if you always complained to like a girlfriend, right? Nobody wants to be that friend that every time they call, it's just like, oh my gosh,
Debbie
woe is
Downer.
me, right?
Yeah.
So you also have to be kind of like a normal human being. Lord, how are you? I know that might sound weird, but like literally, Lord, what do you want me to know today? Help me understand what truth you want me to know. What do you need me to be reminded of today? And you literally expect responses. And, you know, if this is a foreign concept, I invite people to read anything by Ignatius of Loyola, like the concept of discernment of spirits, anything by Father Jacques Philippe, like what it looks like to develop a life of interior peace, interior freedom. The book that I read every day, it's called Divine Intimacy. This is sort of
so good. Yes.
This is not for the faint of heart, just FYI, just telling you all. This is not some light, happy, clappy, it's like the opposite of happy, clappy.
It's deep. Sometimes I read my daily, because I use it too, and I'll read my daily reflection. I'm like, 3 or 4 more times. Hold on.
It's also a little bit like, you are meant for nothing. So
Yeah.
If you're like me that struggles sometimes with like pride and with like too much ambition, it's a very, very helpful book. Anyway, my point is that you have got to, like, my encouragement is that I avoided like the plague in the first few years of my career. Just invite the Lord into those decisions. Ask him, what do you want me to do with these gifts? What do you want me to do with my time? Okay, you've clearly given me no shortage of whatever, like even right now, okay, even in this present moment, I am sometimes like, Lord, it's too much.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 41, the sciatic pain is absolutely annoying, but it's not like you're not exactly like, okay, I'm going to give you less things to do. It's like,
Right.
Great, we're going to change women's healthcare in America. Like, okay, great. Like, no big deal. NBD. We'll just do that.
Thank you.
We'll do that in the Instagram reel. Okay.
Yeah.
But my point is if you have discerned that carefully, so if you said, Lord, okay, I've been given this opportunity to consider, is this where you want me to use my gifts?
Yeah.
Then you trust that he will make the things possible that will make it possible for you to do it without being a total not kind person to your family or not present to your family. And some of that takes a lot of faith. You know, when I coach women in business, that's probably the biggest thing I observe is not enough. And it's natural, okay? Because nobody wants to set themselves up for failure. Nobody signs up and says, I'm going to do something where, you know, I'm going to publicly fail. That's just not human nature. But what I observe sometimes in myself as well is like, I don't trust your capacity, Lord, to make whatever this is possible. Or I don't trust your capacity, Lord, or ability, Lord, to help me navigate it when it is hard. And I really invite people to reflect on that because it's a very important thing. It's not wrong to do pros and cons lists and to sort of weigh how will this negatively impact my family. That's not wrong. Obviously, do that, right? But I do think that sometimes we look at the potential of pain or of like inconvenience or of hardship, and then we just use that as the automatic, no way I'm going to do that.
That's our excuse to just jump ship and not try.
And this is why discernment's so important, because it's like, well, what if you're invited to increase your trust radically? And that can be very scary, right?
Yeah.
And this is where things like a good spiritual director is really important. This is where things like staying very close to the sacraments is so important. This is where a great community of people who also understand that discernment is so paramount. Like, these things are really, really important.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I have so much to digest for myself. So if you're watching this, listening to this, take some notes, okay? Let's take our notes together because it's great to hear from someone too that has like lived these different stages of life and who for us, maybe listening, we feel like, oh my gosh, Lisa can do it all. She just does it all, you know? Look at her, listen to her talk to us about this. Like, it feels so easy, but also knowing the reality that, like, you were so honest. You're like, even today, it's like, Lord, this sometimes just feels like a lot. Like, whew, I really signed up for all of this? I said yes, you know? He already knows where our hearts and minds are at, but to be able to effectively communicate with him and to invite him into that communication with us. And I really love what you said maybe a while back about flipping it a little bit. Like, instead of saying, God, I'm going to take you on this journey with me, and instead saying, take me on the journey with you. And let's see where it can go together. I'd love to shift gears a little bit to talk about the women's healthcare and advocacy that you're doing, and even maybe specifically, because I know you have daughters, how having daughters of your own, who I'm sure are, maybe some of them are of age where they're getting their period and they're coming into these conversations with friends and people around them, and having to navigate the noise of the world. So give me a little insight into, as a mother, what maybe that has looked like. And then we can talk a little bit about what that advocacy has looked like in women's healthcare as well.
So Guiding Star Project was founded by this beautiful woman named Leah Jacobson, who I'm so grateful to know and be friends with now. And it came to her in adoration one day. She was sitting in adoration and she just was like, wouldn't it be great if we could combine the resources of pregnancy resource centers, fertility awareness coaching, and birth, like, and just provide all of that in one stop, like a one-stop location. Yeah. And that was the original vision of Guiding Star. And we now have 7 physical locations across the United States. We've had 60 groups reach out with interest to expand. And our newest venture is in Tampa, Florida, a birth center. But what makes Guiding Star, and to answer your question about motherhood and my own daughters, what makes Guiding Star really unique is that we have articulated why it's so important that healthcare begin as young as age 9 and then go all the way through to menopause. Like, you can't just sort of focus on birth, because if you only focus on birth, we have no sense of how birth happens. We have no sense then, like, after birth, like, what can I expect? You know, I could go on and on. I could get very negative. I'll pause that. It's an alarming. We're in an alarming time in history where I'm gonna go negative. We're in an alarming time in history where a woman can come in for a C-section in a hospital, and then literally while she's kind of dazed and drugged and kind of, you know, in a state of you know, mild trauma, like that can happen. Even good things can provide, you know, a traumatic experience. She's asked, hey, do you think you're going to have any more children? Because while you're open, we might as well tie or cut your tubes. Right. That's the reality. And so what we're trying to do at Guiding Star is give people immense education that we don't have to tie or cut anything, because this is natural and good. And your ability to have babies is not something to be suppressed or treated like a disease. I think that's the biggest thing that's come out of Guiding Star, especially in like recent months and years, is this notion that children are not a sexually transmitted disease. Yeah. Think about that for a minute. Like, it breaks my heart that we are growing up in a generation where so flippantly a woman will be prescribed a pill that will absolutely suppress something that her body is designed to do. So anyway, just soapbox over there. But that's what I'm very proud of. I'm so proud of Leah's original vision and what it's sort of, you know, what it's evolved to today. But it's just become a lot more factual and a lot more empowerment. So one of the things, again, I'll just bring up Cycle Show. There's this notion of, I cannot protect what I do not value and respect. So if I'm going to be kind of like there's an element there of, I don't value this, or I'm afraid of it, or, you know, like I'm trying to run from it. Whereas when you think of I cannot protect what I don't value and respect. We're coming from this place of like, wow, I have a superpower. Like my ability to make a baby is a unique and incredibly powerful ability. Like even just look at my body language when I'm talking that way. Like I sit up straight. I there's a twinkle in my eye. And so that's the kind of environment I'm now trying to raise my family in, as opposed to like, oh, I'll tell you that when you're older. Now, of course, there's an age appropriate way you do everything. So I'm not saying you just don't do this with some prudence or with some reason, right? But it's a very, we don't shy from these conversations anymore. And it's very much like, which I actually really try to honor also where my daughters might be in their cycles, like, and where I might be in my particular, hormonal levels and whatnot. And actually just like honor everybody, like ask everybody to honor it. Not that it's a big deal. Like, hey, it's on the calendar, like mom's
right. Everyone look.
No, but
Here.
Just like, oh yeah, I need a little bit of support right now. I'm needing a little bit of time to just rest and recover. Like, can you help me XYZ, right? Can you take the baby on a walk, that kind of a thing. And so it's not as hidden. It's not as shameful. It's looked at as like a superpower, truly.
Yes, I think that's incredible. And that's very much aligned too with what CCL and PeakDay have been trying to do to get the world to really understand that learning about our bodies, while it can seem intimidating to learn your cycle and mucus and what's actually happening under there, because for some reason we didn't learn it in sex ed in high school, it can feel overwhelming, but really it's so foundational to just having good communication, just for yourself, for your healthcare provider, but also for families, for mothers and daughters to be able to talk so openly about, hey, honey, you're on your period, or you just got off, or, maybe this is why you're feeling this way. Like, it's okay. Every woman kind of goes through this thing. And for young girls to feel that empowerment, and in a way, because we all know the phrase, my body, my choice thing. But in a very similar way, it's like we can take that ownership back by saying, I do know my body. And to take it to healthcare providers and to say, I'm having these symptoms. I don't want the Band-Aid because I want to get to the solution. So I love that you guys have that course. I know PeakDay has a course for teenage daughters and their mothers to kind of go through together, because a lot of us mothers too maybe discovered cycle tracking and all of that later on in life. Even if we're not using it for family planning, we still know it because we know how much that impacts our day-to-day life, our energy, our food intake even, or how we're responding to our kids at a certain time. And to be able to, like you said, offer grace to yourself, but then also extend that and to say, hey, mommy's having a hard time right now. Could you help me with this thing? And then as the girls get older, I think that's actually really neat, because I myself will have, I have a girl, boy, girl, and this one's a boy. So we're going to have a household, with all the mixes, and to be able to have that openness of communication, even amongst siblings, and to teach these little men to understand in not a weird way. And again, of course, like age appropriate, but to understand that maybe sister needs some space, or she needs some help, or she's not just being whiny for whatever reason, like we have this system that makes us go like this sometimes.
The central nervous system is, I think, something that everyone can learn a little bit more about. It comes into play in so many different, like in every aspect of our life. Like it comes up a lot for the women I coach in business, because they'll get to like a scenario like, okay, now you're going to talk about your business online and you're going to start to make offers. And I'll watch people just be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of part of it. Like you kind of have to tell people what you do. But then you have to dig in a little bit and realize that, let's say you were told that talking about money is very bad. Or let's say you were told that if you ever do something like a I sold Beauty Counter for a really long time while it was on. Like, if you ever do something like that, people are going to like laugh at you, and it's not a respectable, avenue of income. Like, if that's all been ingrained in you, of course, your system is going to try to keep you safe. And so it's going to say, nope, you're not going to do that. And all kinds of things are going to happen. Paralysis, fear, like all kinds of things are going to happen. So the role of the central nervous system in life in general, in discernment, is very important for people to pause on. There are so many things we can do to support our systems, like just walking, dancing, moving our bodies, so that things like cortisol, things that are working through our body that we might not even be aware of or have not ever considered, that you can actually help to curb or
help regulate.
Like, exactly. Meaning, and the reason why I brought this up is because sometimes it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay to have a time that's whiny, Now, do you want to make everybody's life miserable? No, of course not. But it's not bad to be sad. And it's not bad when a sibling is having a mood. So instead of just trying to correct or trying to be like, oh my gosh, stop it, or everybody else ganging up, you make space for it. And you say, okay, wow, I acknowledge that you're having a hard time. It's even better when the person can acknowledge and say, listen, I'm having a really hard time, and you're not going to get a favorable outcome from me if you ask me this question right now. So I think I'm just going to excuse myself if you, and a lot of this takes humility. It takes great self-awareness and, of course, communication. So they're just important things to navigate.
Yeah. And it's such an opposite way of how I think many of us grew up, even if we're a couple generations apart. Like we all kind of, I think, in our motherhood now, have been trying to rewire some of those things for our own kids so that they can feel comfortable, without disrespect, of course, saying those things, and like being very honest with how they feel and what they need, because we've created a space in our household and a family life culture that makes room for it, and that extends grace to it. And I think, that's such a beautiful point to bring up. One of the things that obviously we do here at PeakDay is we have the PeakDay app. And so, kind of the role of technology in cycle tracking and in women's health and fertility nowadays, because as I'm sure you know full well from working with all these birth centers and everything, it's kind of interesting that the world doesn't really know about all the resources that are at our fingertips as women to make more health conscious choices for our bodies, so that we don't have to use a pill to suppress certain things. And so what do you think is the role that technology can play, or maybe you've seen played in the women's healthcare world right now?
I don't have the exact statistic memorized, but the femtech industry is this is content I immerse myself in regularly, and I don't have this particular stat memorized, but it was something ridiculous, like in the billions of dollars. Like it is set to be a very financially a place of financial interest for investors, because people are starting to see these trends. They're starting to see that it's not just Catholics, for example, or it's not just Christians who are looking to perhaps naturally delay or just be more aware, right? Yeah. It's also just your woman who is realizing that I don't want plastic in my water. I don't want toxins in my beauty products. Yeah. I want a natural approach to either my family planning or my approach to my hormonal health. And that's becoming popular, like amongst non-faith-based crowds, right? Yeah. So, there's many, I've been introduced to some of these tracking apps that are like hundreds of dollars. Like they're just very sophisticated pieces of machinery that a woman can have to help feel very much empowered around, and what's the word I'm looking for? Like, she's not going to break it like I did. Like it's very accurate, and it's giving her really great information. Anyway, so just, I think we're going to see more and more investment. And I think if I could be like see the future a little bit, I think we're going to see big advancements in infertility and tracking specifically to get pregnant with the same, with similar technology as we have with other apps, but like specifically to women who are desiring to get pregnant. I think there's a lot of potential in that arena.
Yeah. It's so funny you bring that up. Just before we hopped on this call, I was filming some stuff for PeakDay and CCL about using the PeakDay app to get pregnant and some of the statistics they've been able to see, because so many of the tracking apps, they'll use a calendar or just averages based on different women, right? Versus PeakDay is using the symptothermal method, which we know is a scientific-based NFP method, for women to put in their temperature, track their cervical mucus, and like 60 plus other signs and symptoms that they want to track, right? And accuracy, like you said on some of these apps, is becoming just so great and so good. And it's right there at our fingertips. And it's almost like, gosh, I wish I grew up with that, because maybe what kind of things or confusion I could have avoided, or being put on birth control because my cycle was weird. And then as soon as I came off of it, literally nothing had changed, But if I had had something that I could really trust, was taking into consideration my body and my signs and hormonal fluctuations, to be able to figure out, okay, well, what's the root cause of that instead? Oh, I'm low progesterone. Who would have thunk?
It's language that I think is becoming more common parlance now, right? Like even the word progesterone, I think, was not as sort of in the vernacular as it is today. I really do like just challenging people to have knowledge. Like, do you know what's happening? What's happening in your body? Are you aware of, like, even just how one gets pregnant? I think a lot of women don't even, like, I'll just be honest. We had a conference for Guiding Star where we had, we told the story of a young woman who had gotten pregnant. She was in high school, and she was asked the question by one of our Guiding Star staff, do you know when you got pregnant? And she said no. And then the practitioner was like, well, how many times were you sexually active? And she said 1 time. So she did not have the knowledge to make that correlation. Like, you can get pregnant when you are intimate. Like, it was not, was not part of her body literacy. This whole notion of body literacy, I think, is really what it is. It's like, just, do you know your body? Do you know what it can do? Do you know what it's capable of? Like, just these basic conversations of body literacy. So those are some of my very vulnerable thoughts.
I appreciate them, because I think having that conversation around body literacy can lead to all those other things, because it's, do you know what happens? Do you know what it's capable of? And then that kind of shifts into, do you know what you are capable of, right? Not just what your body can do, but do you know how capable you are to handle it? And I think that's the conversation that will shift our culture, hopefully in the next generations, for women to be able to feel that empowerment, breaking that glass ceiling in a sense, but with confidence in what we're capable with our motherhood, with being able to bear children, and the, like you said, the superpower that is the female body and all that it is to offer. So I think that's a fantastic answer. If
I may, the central nervous system, again, has to be taken into account, because we can't ignore trauma. Trauma will impact even birth trauma. Like, birth trauma is real. So meaning, like, if you've never heard this term before, there are some women who go through a birth that leaves them with pain, fear. They did not feel safe. So there's myriad of ways that we could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that has to be addressed in these conversations. And this is why I just think it's so important that as a culture, like, one of the things I want my children, we really believe in classical education, because this is a big tenet of it, is, can we be curious Just full stop. Can we be curious? Because I think even someone who has gone through trauma can get to that first point of curiosity. She might not be able to get further than that without healing, like without significant healing. So I mean therapy, without physiotherapy even. So like mental, spiritual, all the things. She might not be able to get beyond curiosity, but can we ask good questions that can maybe then lead us? Well, what if healing was possible? What if another child was possible? What if I could feel empowered about my body instead of a victim to it? Like just that small little like, what if can be helpful to everyone.
Well, and I think that curiosity too opens the door for so many conversations with people that might otherwise have been closed off. Because I know that when someone is curious with me, I feel a lot more safe and comfortable to be curious about them. So I think that's a great place to leave off our viewers. And thank you, Lisa, for allowing us to be curious about your life and dive into, oh my goodness, every aspect, it feels like.
I'm curious how I allowed myself to be so vulnerable today. I'm telling you, it's the advanced maternal age hormones of pregnancy. I'm like, I don't care about anything anymore. Like,
well, thank you, Lord. Well, thank you, Holy Spirit, for doing that today, because I really do think that just certain bits of these conversations are going to land in the hearts of several women the way that they need to, right? And that's what we prayed for at the beginning.